I choose to believe that healing beyond my own strength is possible.
Trust grows as I open myself to a power greater than my struggle.
Hope returns when I stop relying only on myself and allow something greater to guide me.
Welcome to Table Talk, a 12-step journey with Nick Robinson.
Welcome back to the conversation. I'm Nick Robinson, and it is an honor to be here with Rick Lanham as we continue our Table Talk, a 12-step journey, as we continue going through the steps of recovery. Again, I just want to remind you that this is not just about drugs and alcohol, but it can be about many things in our lives. It can be lack of control with our money. It can be all kinds of issues in our personal lives, in our public lives, and even all the way to our discipleship of following Jesus Christ as Christians. And today is kind of the perfect part of thinking about discipleship, because today, step 2 brings that home pretty emphatically. Okay, Rick, what is step 2?
When we left off last time, we were at the end of hope.
Yeah.
Well, actually, we are at the end of ourselves.
Yeah.
Talking about being powerless, helpless, and unmanageable.
Our hope is not in us.
Exactly. And we're talking about hope. And I was thinking about, where does my help come from? I have put my hope in the Lord. And step 2 is, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And so step 2 basically comes down to realizing that there is a God, and it's not me. Yeah. And that's one of the great phrases of the 12-step program, is that for the longest time, I kept looking inward, and that comes down to ego and pride. And, my scripture says that it was ego and pride that has always been man's greatest downfall.
Comes before the fall.
It comes before the fall, and it always comes down to the demise of my sin. Wow. And gets in the way of me, death to self, and taking up. When I get in my own way, it always led to a further connection to my addiction. And so step 2 becomes the realization that my sanity, there's a promise. The promise of step 1 over helplessness was hope. So there's promises connected to all of these steps. And when I get to this, came to believe in a power, this is the power of the cross. Ultimately, like I said in the very first episode, have we fallen so far as to be beyond recovery? By no means. Romans 11:11. So when I take recovery as a whole and think about what that means to work every single step, step 2, coming to believe in God, coming to believe in the power, the ultimate power to restore me to sanity, to serenity. One of the promises is that we will understand the word serenity, and we will know peace. That ultimately is the restoration of peace that passes understanding. Not the peace like the world knows. Hey, peace. Go back to the 60s. Go back to...
Rick, I can't go back to the 60s. I didn't live back then.
Yeah, well, I can. But the flip side to that is understanding the peace that the Lord gives, the peace that we find when our hopelessness, our helplessness, our unmanageability, all that we had come to accept as that normalized chaos. And then we all of a sudden realize that something's not right. Like we talked about in episode 1. Something isn't right. I need help. And then it is, where is my help? My help comes from the Lord. Mm-hmm. Where comes my strength? My help comes from above, and that is the power that's greater than myself that can restore me to sanity. That's the essence of step 2.
Well, and so, Rick, you and I, we're Christians. We have a certain higher power in mind when we talk about a higher power. When it comes to the 12 steps, what kinds of higher powers do people find? Is it the Christian God? Are people relying on other higher powers? Are there 12 steps in Hindu traditions or Buddhist traditions that people also connect with?
There are, and there's an openness to that, and nobody's going to shove a higher power down anybody's throat when they come into a 12-step program. They're going to give them the freedom based on their religious background. The 12 steps initially were written and based off the book of James, the Sermon on the Mount, and 1 Corinthians 13. However, when you get into any 12-step program, there's going to be the latitude for people to choose a higher power, recognizing that when they came in looking for help because what they were doing on their own wasn't working, and doing it on their own failed.
Yeah.
Had it worked, they wouldn't be looking for help.
Wouldn't need to look anymore. Yeah, so I think that's important for people who might be considering the 12 steps who don't have faith yet. So if someone comes to me and they ask me about faith, I have God the Father, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit that I'm going to point to. But for someone who's not ready to say like that's the God or the power that they're going to relate to, I think for people entering the 12 steps, just to know that it's not just one answer, but you can find your own answer in that can be important and encouraging. So here, I noticed that in this statement, I've come to believe. That feels like a process that's going on in someone. It's not, people aren't showing up and say, I already have this concrete faith. There is a coming to faith in the higher power that is part of this. Am I seeing that accurately, that in this process, people often maybe are deepening their faith or finding faith even for the first time as they go through these steps?
I would say it's a little bit of both.
Okay.
First off, for some people, they will come in. I know a lot of people, and experience this some myself, even as a pastor, because when I hit rock bottom, there was a lot of judgment as a pastor struggling with some addiction.
Yeah.
Where there was a lot of judgment because people thought of me as somebody who was, you're one of them. And so I got stereotyped. On the other hand, stereotypes sometimes exist because they're true.
Yeah. Sometimes.
But the stereotype was, there's also this understanding that sometimes people are expected to get right with God before they come into the church club, as opposed to churches being a hospital for wounded and broken people. Yeah. I want wounded and broken people in the churches next to me here.
Well, we're all wounded and broken people, just how much we're willing to acknowledge it.
How much, so that when I meet you in the lobby of the church and you say, Rick, are you okay? I can say to Nick, no, I'm not. No, and you can be with me, as opposed to me lying to your face and saying, I'm fine. I'm okay. So the transparency and the vulnerability of what the church community is genuine. But I will also tell you that I've been in a lot of meetings, whether it's an AA meeting, Celebrate Recovery meeting, or a 12-step meeting. I've also been in a lot of those meetings where there's more grace, love, tolerance, and forgiveness in some of those meetings than in a Sunday school meeting on any given Sunday. So the church, meaning the gathering, as opposed to just a church building, there's a lot that we can learn.
Absolutely.
There's a phenomenal book that was written within the last couple of years. It's Why Can't the Church Be More Like an AA Meeting? It's a fantastic book, but there's a lot that we could learn about grace, love, tolerance, forgiveness, and acceptance, transparency from 12-step meetings within the church itself.
And I'm struck about something that Tanner said last time too. We can't fix someone else for them. They have to acknowledge what state they are in, and that's true for someone entering recovery. That's true for entering a journey of faith or anything. We can't fix someone else. And so as we acknowledge that there's a higher power, I think part of that is not only can I not fix myself, but I also can't fix you. So like when you come into church on Sunday morning and you say, yeah, I'm not doing well today, I have a role to play, but my role to play is not to fix you.
Correct.
It's to be there with you in that. And so the higher power is not just how I relate to myself, but also changes the way I relate to others.
This has a lot to do with openness and honesty, too. I mean, if you go in to talk to your doctor, and your doctor is there to help you, the doctor's not going to know if you're having pains in your muscles if you don't point to the muscle and tell them which one is hurting.
Absolutely.
Has a lot to do with openness, honesty, and willingness to be a part of the process.
Yeah. So openness with ourselves, openness with those who are on the journey with us. Speaking of people on the journey with us, we're going to bring Mike on now, and Mike's going to tell us a little bit about his journey. So we'll be back in just a moment with Mike.
That sounds great. Thanks.
I think when you're looking at reclaiming an object, for me, it's can I reuse it or can I repurpose it? And then as I go through it, it's how can it be used? How can I give it, for me, it's new life.
Welcome back to the Table Talk as we talk about the 12 steps of recovery. And we have brought Mike in to talk with us today. Mike, this is not an easy place to be. Why did you say yes to being part of this conversation?
Well, hi, Nick. And
Hi.
Rick, I'm glad you're both here. I'm glad, honestly, I'm glad to have the opportunity to be here. Rick had mentioned something about talking about recovery, and recovery is something that I absolutely love to talk about today.
Yeah.
I just do, and I'm willing to, after working a 12-step program, I'm more than willing to give back to the community, to give back to the group, to give back to the church, to whomever I may need to. So when I was asked to come over and talk, I was just elated. I hope God's got a good purpose for me being here and being able to share some of my life with you.
Amen. So you said you love talking about this. Why do you love it?
Because I've got a life today.
Yeah.
I've got a life, man. I've got serenity. I've got peace in my life, and I know who Mike is.
So I hear your testimony is that this has worked. This has helped you.
It works. It really does.
All right, so we're here to talk about step 2 today. We talked about step 1 previously, and so I just want to encourage you to tell us about step 1 or 2, but just to share your journey in relation to these steps any way that you see fit. But can you tell us first, what was step 2 hard for you? And if so, just flush that out for us.
Yes, and yes, and yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely, man. And I tell you what, I listened to your first, the last talk, and you was talking about step 1 and how hard it was, or if it was hard. And I wanted to share this with you that step 1 was absolutely the hardest step in the world for this alcoholic, addict. I have a lot of hurts, habits, and hang-ups, and it applies to all. It's very applicable to all of this.
Yeah, so why was step 1 so hard for you?
Well, because I was the kid that grew up that had to take care of business himself, that wanted to prove to mom and dad I could do it, man, and I wanted them to be proud of me. So if I had to ask somebody for help or not be able to get something done, then I was less than, and I was in a bad way, in a very bad way. So I'm kind of the guy that had to learn from the hard road of knocks, and that's just plumb silly today because you don't have to.
Yeah. But what we do, we start off our lives thinking that, believing that, like that we have to be the one figuring it out. And we don't always see the problems that other people are facing because we do bury them and carry them with us and hide them from the world. And so we're not always aware that the people around us are fighting a great battle, sometimes getting help, sometimes needing help in the midst of that. And so it makes it harder for us to say yes to help and to ask for that kind of help. So what was hard about step number 2?
Okay, well, in step 2, so, well, I want to throw one thing out on step 1 here that happened. So I joined the service right out of high school. So I was an 18-year-old know-it-all. I don't know if you guys run into any of those.
Been one of those before.
Yes, I was definitely an 18-year-old know-it-all, and I was tired of mom and dad telling me what to do. So I was going to leave, and I joined the Army before I got out of high school. And I turned around and left home and went and let somebody else tell me what to do.
Yeah.
You know, and it was a rough deal. It was a rough situation. And I'm trying to make it short, but in the process of graduating high school, my high school girlfriend told me that when I was 2 weeks prior to leaving, she was 2 months pregnant. And I wanted to get married anyway, but I wanted to go grow up a little bit, come back home with some money and be able to supply for her or provide for her in the way that I was raised.
Yeah.
But I also didn't want to have a little bastard child running around. I want that kid to have my name. He's my baby, or our baby, and I was still a kid. So anyway, long story short, we got married prior to me leaving. So this is what I did, and this is how messed up my mind was up in the beginning. I graduated high school, I joined the Army, I got married, and I'm going to be a dad. Well, I went and I left and I got in, I went to the service, I went through basic AIT. Next thing you know, I come back home for a little bit and I go to Germany. And all this is happening all at once, and this is my first time leaving home too. So I'm just scared little kid trying to be something that he's not, and it was hard. So I went through the service part, and something happened with the marriage during the service. A little infidelity there with the wife doing something against me. We ended up getting divorced in the process, and after that divorce, I had a real stinking problem with God. And I wasn't about to take responsibility for it. So I told him that why did he let this happen? And I was so mad about him doing it, I told him to take a hike. I said, if that's the case, then I'll just take care of business myself from now on.
Yeah, so you had maybe a relationship with God beforehand.
Absolutely. I was raised in the church, you know, and I love God. And I am a believer in Jesus Christ, and I'm not afraid to say that.
Absolutely.
But, you know, the thing is, it's nice about that, as Rick spoke earlier, that recovery is about finding something greater than yourself, a power greater than yourself. And step 2 is I come to believe in a power greater than myself to restore me to sanity. You know, it took me the longest time. I struggled with that power because I told God to take a hike, and I ran on Mike's wheel for 20 years. Nick, 20.
That's a long time.
And I had a lot of good training on not believing in something greater than myself.
Yeah.
And it's hard. And I wanted to be a good person, but I wasn't necessarily the best. I struggled, and the only way I knew how to deal with the big problems was to drink or drive. Or eat, or have sex, or do whatever the case may be. It's just whatever happened at the time. That's what I used to take care of what my pain was. And the pain never went away. You know, one thing I found out in the process of recovery is that I was always trying to get away from the bad guy. And, you know, I found out that I was the bad guy. And I couldn't get away from him. Every time I got up and looked in the mirror, I was staring at him.
If there's anyone that we're stuck with, it's ourselves.
It is, man. So I can't run away from myself. And when I come to understand that, then I can understand the second half of part 2 is that something greater than myself is going to restore my thinking, insanity to sane, to
Yeah.
make me have right thinking. So I also am not, when I came into recovery, I wasn't a drunk and I wasn't a nutcase. You know what I mean? And when they talked about insanity and the being an alcoholic or admitting your powerlessness over whatever your addiction is,
Yeah.
I wasn't going to do it. It's just no way, man. And I had no idea. I thought insanity means that you were a bad person. It was some cuckoo guy that needed to be put in a padded room somewhere. I was not that, but that's not what insanity's about. Not at all. You know, that's just like the word humility. I had that mixed up with humiliation, and it's nowhere close to it, man.
So you were working on a lot of definitions
Well, I'm
throughout this
telling
process.
you, well, it come up to where life was happening, and I tried to understand what was going on.
Yeah.
So I had no idea. I really had no idea, man. I had no idea that I was an alcoholic when I came into the program, and I found out that I am, and when I admitted that, and we admitted that together, and I got the hope from people like Rick and people like in the meetings that are there that's doing their thing, because see, if they can do it, I've got a chance to do it.
Yeah.
And if it worked for them, and they're in there cutting up and happy and you know, and I tell you what, I get a joy going to a meeting, and I haven't been to a bad one yet.
Oh.
I haven't.
And you've been to a few of them.
And I've been to a few of them. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So that recovery side on trying to work on building something at that relationship, I had been 20 plus years that I had been running on Mike's wheel, and I come in here and you're saying that I got to believe in something greater than me.
Yeah.
And I want to share something with you too that I haven't shared with a lot of people, and it's good to share, is that, you know, the whole time I was trying to say, fool young God, and know that I'm running the show, I still knew that he was always there.
Yeah.
I could not get away from it. I could not. And
Well, it sounds like you would rather be able to admit that he wasn't there. Like you would prefer that if you had told him to go away, that he really would have gone away.
yeah, but he was still there.
Yeah.
He because he's God.
Yeah.
And he's got my back, and he just won't sit there and wait. He loves me enough that he gives me free will to do whatever I want. And when I have the opportunity to be able to get right-minded, that right way of thinking, and not sin so much,
Yeah.
that I got a chance to ask God to be able to take care of me. And you know what? He says, yes, I will. Yeah. And I'm so happy for that.
All right, Mike, I want to drill down on a specific part of your story.
Okay.
So you talk about the events when you were a young adult. You're going through so much change. I mean, that'd be hard to deal with today as as an adult, right? All those changes, and then you felt like God had done you wrong, and you said, "God, I don't need you anymore."
Yeah.
How did you get back to that place where you were ready to go from saying, "God, I don't need you," to "God, I do need you"? Like, what changed in you or around you that made you be able to do that? Great.
Okay. Well, that's a great question.
Well, thank
and I thank you for that. So this is I've come to find out that recovery is a journey. Okay. It's not, we're not seeking a destination. When I first came into the program, I was on a destination. I wanted to get from 1 to 12 out the door and done with you guys.
Yeah.
You know, and I, because my need was to get back to where I was. And thank God that I got the opportunity to be able to admit that I was powerless.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I had to come to terms that not only was I powerless over my addiction, but I was powerless over everything except for what God's given me to be able to have the ability to do myself. You know, so I found out I've got one thing that I can work on and one thing only, and that's Mike.
Yeah.
And I heard Chandler say it earlier, is that I am the problem. You
Mm-hmm.
know? So I've got a little sticker on a mirror at the house that when I look in the mirror and I see the little sticker, it says, "You're looking at the problem." And I get reminded because I need a daily reminder.
Yeah.
So what happened was is that when I come to terms with that, it has to begin with step one. And the steps are put in a process in order for a reason. Because it builds on the other to be able to get to the opportunity to where you want to have a relationship with something greater than yourself.
Yeah.
and then you want to end up in the next step, you're going to be turning your life and your will over to that higher power's care.
Yeah.
So the thing is that when I come to terms with the fact that I'm an alcoholic, I jumped all in. And when I jumped all in, I had to learn how to be able to, I had a sponsor, and my sponsor told me, he says, hey, this is how I did it. Why don't you give it a try and see if it works for you? And you take what you can use, just leave the rest. Well, he did that for me, man, and you know what? Recovery led me right back to God. It led me right back to my belief in something greater than myself. So in the beginning, I believed in the group because I was still mad at God.
Yeah. So
I turned my life and my will over to a group of drunks. G-O-D. God is good. Oh, it was so cool, man. And I was more than happy to do that because, see, I did come to terms with the fact that two minds are greater than one. And I used to think I was unique and I knew it all.
Yeah.
And this is not the case. So when I come to terms with that and admit that, then I actually give myself a chance to have an open mind, listen and try to receive something good that's going to be out there that I could use to be able to help me when the struggles come, and the struggles will come.
Yeah. So that recognizing that we can't be the answer to our problems opens your mind to new ideas. And one of those ideas is this higher power that had been part of your life, you know, whether you liked it or not, really.
You're right.
And so you were open up to starting this relationship with God again. And really, I'm noticing that this step too, I've come to believe in a power. It's not even, in these steps, we're going to learn more about this power and the power's role in our lives. This is just that step of belief in the church life. If we're going to use some fancy church words for it, we might call it justification. We believe in God, but then there's more work. There's sanctification. God's not done with us. God's going to get a hold of us and keep going with us. You know, admitting that we have a problem is the first step, and then there's 11 more to come. We're not done with it there, but it's the crucial step to making a difference. Well, Mike, I want to thank you so much for sharing your story with us today, and maybe we'll have to have you back to talk about some of this some more if you're willing.
Hey, it's my pleasure, and I'd be more than happy to come back anytime you need me.
All right, thank you. Well, we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back to wrap up this conversation on step number 2.
Great.
God reclaims the world through the life, death, resurrection, and ascension of Jesus. Jesus comes to the world to show us love, to sacrifice for the forgiveness of sins, and in that provides a path for us to be reclaimed, which is not to be owned or controlled by God, but to be given new and full life. It's easy to see the strength in something when you're building a fresh barn. You imagine some of these barns we see around our community in the countryside, and I wasn't there when they were fresh, but you imagine like the glory that they stood in with fresh timbers, and it was easy for people to see the strength. It took away from the structural integrity of the building.
However I come by that particular set of boards I have an opportunity to do something with it as well. Like I said, I give it hopefully a new purpose, a new look in some cases, but I hope that it's something that others can enjoy, aside from maybe the beauty that it provided, the function that it provided over the years. Now we have an opportunity to reclaim it, reuse it, repurpose it into something wonderful again.
There are times in our life when our lives get away from us. We are stuck in patterns or habits, sometimes sins or just busyness, and we need new life and full life again. And so to reclaim in our own lives means looking at ourselves with grace and love, but also recognizing that God has a role to play in the reclamation of our lives and bringing fullness back to us. Welcome back to the conversation as we wrap up talking about step number 2. Now, Rick, I'm kind of in this mindset, this is the end of our third episode as we talk about step number 2. We kind of did the step 0 conversation. And we've spent maybe an hour and a half total talking about these steps. But I'm smart enough to know, and I'm not that smart, but I'm smart enough to know that it does not take an hour and a half to go through step 1 to 2 to whatever. What kind of time frame might someone more realistically be looking at if they maybe start step 1? What's the range of time frames? Because I kind of assume everyone's journey is going to be different, right? Like we can't give. None of this is deep enough for us to give people concrete answers. But what's the range of time frames people are talking about here?
Well, just the way that these conversations have gone, Tanner mentioned step 1 with the kind of the roller coaster. He had 90 days in step 1 and had a relapse, and another 90 days and had another, because he was doing this on kind of self-propulsion, so to speak. Yeah. So he was stuck in a cycle of step 1. Numerous cycles. So, I know another guy that he spent a year just in step 1 wrestling with his self-will run riot, I guess you could say. That's one of the phrases that's used in the big book. I know somebody else that spent a couple of years on steps 1, 2, and 3, just wrestling mentally and emotionally. So it's different for everybody. Mike mentioned in step 2, his conversations with us, that he spent 20-year cycle kind of this wanting to come to believe because he was mad at God, and he just said, hey, forget God. He just 20 years of coming full circle back to the God that he had just let go of. So, this whole journey, rather than a destination, life is a journey, not a destination, of the 12 steps as a pathway and a process, kind of a roadmap for life, which it really is. And it can be used in so many aspects. It's not something that you do. And then, because I remember the first time that I got out of treatment when I went to rehab, it was like, read the book, get a sponsor. And so I read the first 164 days or 164 pages of the big book. I'd read it. I thought, okay, I've read it. Turn the test, so give me my graduation certificate. Yeah. I'm well now. I'm fixed. Yay, Rick. Yay, me. Give me, everybody pat me on the back. Attaboy, you're done. You're all better now. It just doesn't work that way. And that's why, step 10 says continued to take inventory and promptly admit. So you get into a place where steps 10, 11, and 12 become a permanent, perpetual practicing of all of these principles, such that, the promises say, if we're painstaking about this development, that we'll be amazed before we're even halfway through. Well, halfway through is you get through steps 4 and 5, and that's where the healing and the breakthroughs and the miracle is happening. There's so many things. So to say, we're just barely scratching the surface to have a conversation for 30 minutes per step, where some of these you're working, one of the programs, one of the, I think it's Al-Anon, has a huge workbook for the 4th step. It's one of the most comprehensive 4 steps I think I've ever seen. It's phenomenal, but it takes really long time to work through it. So to say, how long does something take? I guess it's how honest do you want to be? The big book talks about honesty, rigorous honesty, and then brutal honesty.
Okay.
So it depends how open are you. It's like me talking about, with your doctor. Doctor asks you, where does it hurt? It doesn't hurt. Well, liar. Well, you wouldn't be at the doctor if you weren't hurting. Why'd you make the appointment? So again, it's just how thorough are you going to be with the people that you're asking to come alongside of you. As a discipler, as a mentor, when somebody says, did you read the passage? Well, I glanced at it. Did you study the passage? Well, I looked at it.
Yeah.
Did you digest it, meditate on it, pray on it? You only get out of it what you put into it.
Yeah, so I'm a pastor, United Methodist pastor, and I know my relationship with God continues to develop all the time, and I've been a pastor for 15 years now, and my relationship continues to change. So I think that's an important part of this, is to think that it's not a destination, it's not just a checkbox, but this is a journey and a work that we're going on over decades and the rest of our life, really. This is a lifelong journey, not a simple answer to a simple question.
Right.
So I have our next conversation, whenever it happens, is going to be on step 3.
Step 3.
What can you give us a little preview? What is step 3?
Turned our will and our lives over to the care of God.
Okay, so we
not just came to believe. Yeah. Now we do the action step, which is turn our will and our lives over.
Okay, well, that's a great place to stop. We will come back next time with the conversation on what it means to turn our lives over to this greater power, to God. Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Mike, for joining us, and thank you for joining us in this conversation today. We'll see you next time.